James would inherit £24,000 on the demise of his great-aunt. But until then, great-aunt Jane Lee Perrot granted James an income of £300 a year. Further money came from marrying Emma Smith, daughter of Augusta Smith, of Tring Park, Hertfordshire, which is now a school for the performing arts. Emma was also goddaughter to Mrs. Shute of the Vine, now a substantial National Trust property in Hampshire. So pleased was everyone with his marriage that James's income from his great-aunt went up to £600 per annum, with a further £100 from Mrs. Shute. Scarlett's was an extensive estate that Austen-Leigh inherited from the will of his great-aunt in 1836, and included the hamlet of Kiln Green on the Bath Road. Austen-Leigh received the £24,000 already bequeathed him, and a sum of money sufficient to maintain his £600 per annum, and he initially used his inherited money to extend the boundaries of the newly inherited estate. This is Null Hill. It stands on one side of the road from London via Slough to Bath, somewhere between Maidenhead and Reading. There were no churches along the Bath Road between these towns, a distance of some 13 miles. Austen-Leigh sat on the building committee, charged with finding a site for a new church to rectify this situation, but was absent for the meeting when the key decision was taken. He wanted to build a church at his hamlet of Kiln Green, but the building committee accepted the offer by Sir Clayton East of land here. The new church was consecrated on August the 24th, 1840. This is the Bath Road at Knowle Hill. Behind me are extensive clay pits, and in the 1840s the brickworks here were expanding rapidly. As a result, the population was also growing, and there was a real need for education and moral guidance. Behind me to my left is Null Hill Church, where James Edward Austen-Leigh's ecclesiastical reputation was founded, and to my right is the school that he built. The schools, for there was one for boys and one for girls, and the teacher's house attached to them, were of dark red and grey brick, with gable ends and high tiled roofs. As originally built, they had tall, twisted chimneys copied from the parsonage at his mother-in-law's estate at Tring Park. Austen-Leigh presented them to the parish in 1847. He became the first vicar of Knowle Hill, but only after a trip to Scotland to visit the library at Abbotsford, the home of the late Sir Walter Scott, to research the admiration that Scott had for the works of Jane Austen. From his own resources, Austen-Leigh quickly engaged a curate, a Mr. John Hempstead, who had studied medicine before taking holy orders, and who could also act, therefore, as the local doctor. He left to be married in 1845, and was replaced by the Reverend Simon Sturgis, who was curate until 1852, and as incumbent until 1859. For him, Austen-Leigh built the parsonage house, now known as the Grange. It is hard to imagine how beautiful the church is on the inside, given the noise of the Bath Road and the austere nature of the exterior. But inside, Austen-Leigh rendered the walls and provided the gallery for the singers led by his butler, with its box pews and a special section for the Sunday school children, supervised by their mistress. Austen-Leigh provided the Gothic reredos stone altar screen, and Miss Hitchings, a relative of the Wargrave vicar, illuminated its alcoves on zinc plate in golden oil colours. The organ was a gift from Austen-Leigh's wife Emma, paid for by selling diamonds she had inherited from Jane Lee Perrot. Sir Clayton East made sure it was not forgotten when he died, in 1851, that he had provided the land and an endowment to the church of £40 per annum. But it was Austen-Leigh who planted trees everywhere. This is Scarlett's Lane. We're back in the countryside and away from the bustle of the Bath Road. When Samuel Wilberforce, now a bishop, persuaded Austen-Leigh to become rural dean of Reading, a major requirement was to have a big house in which, after a church service, The clergy of the deanery could meet 3 times a year. Scarlets fitted the bill perfectly. Austen-Leigh has spent lavishly on this church, and anxious to recoup his capital, decided to accept Wilberforce's offer of the living at Bray, so he could rent out Scarlets and return in 7 years' time, his capital restored. In the event the family never did return, and Scarlets was sold to its tenant in 1862. For 22 years, James Edward Austen-Leigh was the vicar of Bray. He oversaw the Victorian enhancements to the medieval church and to the vicarage now called Tudor House, and its extension now called Berkeley's, for there was a need to provide accommodation for 9 sons and daughters. Bray was one of the richest livings in the country, and surely one of the most attractive. In those days, most of the Thameside frontage all belonged to the church.